You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 46. The striking hawk twice writes a letter. Song Jiang first attacks the Zhu family village. Yang Xiong raised the man, and then introduced him to Shi Xiu as Du Xing of Zhongshan Prefecture. He had a fierce face, and therefore people called him the Demon Face. Previously he had come to Jizhou Prefecture, and had entered into business with some other men. During a quarrel with his partner he had lost his temper and killed him. He had been arrested and tried, but Yang Xiong, knowing that he was very skillful with the cudgel and lance, had saved his life by getting a light sentence passed. The man asked, "On what official business do you come here, my benefactor?" Yang Xiong whispered in his ear, "I committed murder at Jizhou, and am now escaping to Liangshan Marsh, where I shall join the brigands." He then told him about all the trouble at the inn and how Shi Qian had been captured. "You need not worry about that matter," said Du Xing, "because I can arrange for Shi Qian to be released." They asked him to join them at the wine. Du Xing then explained that at that village he was entrusted by the headman with important matters, and he had great influence there. There were 3 villages in close alliance, and altogether they supported an armed force of about 20,000 men. The most influential man was Zhu Chaofeng, who had 3 valiant sons named Dragon, Tiger, and Tiger's Cub. They had a drill instructor named Luan Tingyu, nicknamed Iron Staff, who was invincible. In the western village was a headman who had a son called Hu Qing, nicknamed Flying Tiger, who was very courageous. His sister, Hu San Niang, nicknamed 10 Feet of Green, was a skilled rider, and could fight with a sword in each hand. At the village on the east side was a man Liing, nicknamed Striking Hawk, who was his master, who always carried 5 wing knives on his back, and could throw these 100 paces, and kill men at that distance. These villages supported each other whatever the risk or danger, and were prepared to fight against the brigands of Liangshan Marsh, when they came to command the grain. Du Xing offered to take them to Li Ying, and get him to release Shi Qian. They accepted this offer, and settled their accounts with the innkeeper. They then followed Du Xing to the Li family village. Yang Xiong noticed that it was a big village, with a moat all round. The banks of the moat were very high, and on the top were many hundreds of large willows. They crossed a drawbridge and passed through a gate in a wall. They came to the principal hall, in front of which were over 20 racks filled with spears, swords, etc., all of which were polished bright and in good order. Du Xing asked the other 2 to wait outside, while he went inside to announce their arrival. It was not long before Liang came out, and after being introduced invited Yang Xiong and Shi Xiu to come inside. When they had had some wine, Yang Xiong explained the object of their visit, and as a result Liang told his scribe to write a letter asking for the release of Shi Qian, and sent a mounted messenger with it to the neighboring Zhu family village. It was not long before the messenger returned and reported that the headman had at first been willing to release Shi Qian. But when his 3 sons heard of it they objected, and insisted upon Shi Qian being sent to the magistrate for trial. Liang was surprised at this, and wondered what was the use of the alliance when even his urgent letter had been ignored. He asked Du Xing to go there himself, and try to secure the release. Du Xing agreed to go, but asked Liang to write a letter by his own hand which he would take with him. This was done, and mounting a horse Du Xing galloped off. It was almost night time before Du Xing returned. As he dismounted they saw that he was in a towering rage. His face was red with passion, and as he raised his lips he showed the tightly set teeth. For some time he could not speak. "Take your time and tell us all about it," said Liang at last. Du Xing slowly repressed his anger, and then spoke. "I took your letter to the village, and dismounted at the 3rd gate, where the 3 sons of Zhu Chaofeng were seated. I saluted them separately, and then Tiger's Cub called out, 'Well, what do you come here for?' I replied in a respectful manner, 'I have here a letter from my master.' I presented it. Tiger's Cub showed annoyance as he replied, 'Why does your master not understand human affairs? Early this afternoon he sent some fellow here, with a letter asking for that brigand Shi Qian to be released. Just now we are going to send him to the magistrate, so why have you come here?' I replied that Shurqian was not a bandit, but was a guest on his way to visit my master. He made a mistake in setting fire to his inn. That you would go tomorrow, and make full compensation for the damage done, and hoped that they would overlook the offense and accept a full apology. Then all replied, that cannot be done. So I requested them to kindly read your letter, but Tiger's cub simply took it from me, and tore it into bits without reading it. He then ordered me to get out of their village at once. They also warned me not to incite them to anger any further, or they would. I would not dare to speak their exact words, they were really crude, but they said they would arrest you, sir, also as a bandit of the Liangshan Marsh, and send you to the Yamen. They told their servants to seize me, but I jumped on the horse and galloped off. It is evident that the sworn alliance between our villages is no longer of any value, as those fellows are quite unreasonable. While Liang listened to this, he became more and more annoyed, and at last called out, you men! Quickly get my horse ready. Yang Xiong and Shurqian asked him to keep cool, as they did not wish to see the peaceful relations between the villages disturbed by what they had done. But Liang took no notice of this, went indoors, put on his armor, with a large silk gown over it, put his 5 throwing knives on his back, and took a spear in his hand, put on his iron helmet, and summoned 300 men to accompany him. Du Xing also put on his armor, and got 20 horsemen to follow him. Yang Xiong and Shurqian took their halberds, and also followed. It was late in the afternoon when they reached the other village, and there the men stood in ranks. The village was situated on raised ground, and had 3 protecting walls, one inside the other. The walls were built of stone, and were about 20 feet high. The village was surrounded by a moat, over which were 2 drawbridges in front of the north and south gates. In the towers at the gates were drums, gongs, etc. for summoning the men to fight. Liang reined in his horse before the bridge, and shouted, why have you 3 sons of the Zhu family defamed me? At once the gate of the village was opened, and a body of about 50 horsemen galloped out. In front rode the 3rd son, Tiger's cub, on a roan-colored horse. Liang pointing at him shouted, you fellows still have your milk teeth and childhood's tufts of hair. Your father entered into a sworn alliance with me to defend these villages. If your family had trouble we would render unlimited assistance, or if short of something we would supply it. Today I sent a letter which you tore up. Why did you insult my messenger in that way? Have you no decency? Tiger's cub replied, our family entered into an alliance with you so that we could together resist the encroachments of the bandits at Liangshan Marsh. But now you have become intimate with them, and intended open rebellion. Why do you say that I am intimate with bandits? Why have you arrested an ordinary man, and falsely accused him? The prisoner has already confessed that he is a thief, so why do you talk in this wild, disorderly manner? You cannot hide his crime. You clear off at once, or I will arrest you also. Liang was now very angry, and whipping his horse he galloped forward. Tiger's cub crossed the bridge, and did the same. They met in combat, and charged each other about 18 times. As the tiger's cub could not overcome Liang, he at last turned his horse round, and retreated. Placing his spear on the horse he took his bow and arrow, and turning his body shot at Liang, who was following close behind. Liang tried to avoid the arrow, but it struck him in the shoulder, and he fell off his horse. Tiger's cub pulled his horse round, and rushed forward to seize Liang. Yang Xiong and Shurqian, seeing the danger of Liang, shouted, seized their halberds, and rushed towards Tiger's cub, who seeing that the odds were against him retreated. As the horse turned, however, Yang Xiong struck it, and the animal reared with the pain. Tiger's cub was almost thrown off, but kept his seat. The villagers now rushed forward, and as Yang Xiong and Shurqian were not wearing their armor, they now retreated along with Du Xing, Liang, and their followers. They were pursued for about a li when the villagers returned to the village as it was getting dark. Upon reaching their village, Liang had his wound dressed, and then the 4 men discussed the position. Yang Xiong expressed regret that all this trouble had arisen through their affairs, and considered that there was no way of obtaining the release of Shurqian. They thought that the best thing was for them to proceed to Liangshan Marsh, where they would petition Chao Gai to send an expedition to avenge the insult to Liang. Li Ying agreed to this and pressed the two men to accept some silver to cover their expenses. At last they accepted the money and left at once for Liangshan Marsh. Li Ying and Du Xing remained behind. Yang Xiong and Shi Xiu soon reached the neighborhood of Liangshan Marsh and stayed at the inn kept by Shi Yong as an outpost. When they inquired about the road to Liangshan Marsh, Shi Yong asked where they came from and what business they had at the stronghold. When Yang Xiong said they came from Jizhou, Shi Yong immediately asked if his name was Shi Xiu, and when they had all been introduced, Shi Yong explained that he had heard all about Shi Xiu from Dai Zong, who had just returned and was staying at the stronghold. Shi Yong then shot a whistling arrow across the lake, and soon a party of bandits appeared in boats. They crossed the lake and were taken up to the stronghold, where they were duly introduced to all the leaders. They explained fully all that had occurred at the Zhu family village, and how Li Ying had been grossly insulted. When Chao Gai had heard all the details, he was angry, and said, "We have gathered here many loyal and brave men, and have bestowed much benefit on the people in the surrounding country. When we go on any expedition, we are never deficient in valor. All our brothers here are great heroes. But these two men have been implicated in a petty theft of a chicken, and if we associate with them we shall lose our great reputation. So we must kill these two men, and send their heads to the village to show the people that we have nothing to do with robbers. Then as the people in the village have reviled us, we must go there and destroy their village. Thus we shall preserve our reputation for valor." Song Jiang, however, spoke, "That will not do. These two men did not take part in the theft, as that was the affair of Shi Qian, who was traveling with them. What they have done was not disgraceful. We have heard several times that the Zhu family village has been unfriendly to us. Elder brother, restrain your anger. We have not got a big stock of grain or money, but let us not make too much of that. As they however have insulted us, we can go and punish them for that. If we defeat them, we shall have food supplies for at least 5 years. You cannot go yourself because you are our leader, but I will go and command the punitive expedition. If I fail, then I will not return. I finally propose that Li Ying be admitted to our numbers." "What you say is extremely proper," said Wu Yong. "It would not do to kill our brothers who are willing to join us." "It would be better if you kill me instead of these men," said Dai Zong. All the other leaders expressed their support of these views, and Chao Gai agreed. Yang Xiong and Shi Xiu expressed their apologies. The following day Song Jiang took 3,000 bandits, 300 mounted men, and 9 other leaders. He also placed a similar number of men in charge of Lin Chong and 9 other leaders, and these were to be his reserves. They soon reached the neighborhood of the Zhu family village and encamped. A tent was erected for Song Jiang, and there he discussed matters with Huo Rong. "I have heard that round this village there are numerous small roads, so that it would not be advisable to send our men there at present. We must first send 2 spies to find out all about the roads, and then we can advance with greater security." Li Kuei offered to go as a spy, as he said he had not killed a man for a long time. "You must not go now," said Song Jiang, "because we shall want you when the fighting commences." Li Kuei laughed at this. "There is no need to send spies. If you let me have 200 men, I could enter the village and settle this matter quite easily." "Don't talk nonsense," shouted Song Jiang. "You can wait outside until I call for you." As he went out, however, Li Kuei called out, "Those villagers are only like flies. Why are you so nervous?" Song Jiang summoned Shi Xiu and instructed him to go into the village with Yang Lin. "The people will already be on the qui-vive as your men are here," said Shi Xiu. "How can we enter the village without being seen?" "I can get into the village disguised as a monk," said Yang Linear. "I will carry the prayer rings and shake them as I go along. You can follow me some distance behind." "At Jizhou I sold firewood," said Shi Xiu, "and I think that I may get in the village with a load of firewood." Yang Lin thought this a good idea, and they both agreed to start off that evening. They started off about 5 p.m., and had about 3 li to go. They noticed the numerous paths and roads on all sides, and that the country was well covered with dense trees. Shirshio put down his load and spoke to Yang Lin as there was no one about. There are so many footpaths about that I have not yet recognized the road I was on with Li Ying. As it is now getting dark, we cannot make out our way very clearly. We need not worry about that, replied Young Linear. Let us follow what appears to be the main road. They continued their way, and soon came to a place where there were shops and inns, and Shirshio stopped in front of an inn. There were many men there with uniforms bearing the character Zhu. He spoke to an old man. Sir, what is the reason for these swords being stacked at every door? Where do you come from? Asked the old man. As you do not know, you had better go on your way. I am from Shandong, and having no money, I brought this firewood into the village to sell it. I do not know the customs of this place. You had better get away at once and seek refuge, said the old man. It will not be long before there is big fighting here. What will the fighting be about? You evidently do not know, but I will tell you. This village hates the bandits of Liangshan Marsh, but they are now encamped just outside the village. Our chief has summoned all the men to assemble here. And how many men are there in this village? In this village there are about 10,000 men, but the other village would also join us in any fighting. Why are you afraid of Liangshan Marsh brigands when you have so many men? Even I myself was nearly seized when I first came here. There is an old saying that the roads round this place are so well arranged that men might enter the village, but they could not get out. Shirshio burst into tears, and bowing said, What hard lines for me. I cannot go back even if I sell my firewood. So I will give you this firewood if you will tell me how I can get away. I cannot accept your offer, but I do not mind buying the firewood from you. Please come inside my house, and take a meal before returning. Shirshio thanked him for this, and followed the old man into the house. After partaking of the congee offered, Shirshio again asked to be shown the way out. You just go your way in the village until you come to a poplar tree where you can turn. You must not turn if there is no poplar tree, or there would be death. No other trees will do, take no notice of them. If you make one mistake, your position will be hopeless, as on the other roads there are hidden pointed stakes and hooks. Shirshio thanked him for the information, and asked for his name. The man's name was Zhongli. Shirshio then departed, promising to reward him for the food and wine some other day. Just then there was a great uproar outside, and voices were calling out, A spy is seized. Looking out, Shirshio saw about 80 armed men with a prisoner whom he recognized as Young Linear. Shirshio was much surprised, and turning to the old man asked, Who is the man? Why have they bound him? Have you not heard them say that he is a spy? He has evidently got in the village in the disguise of a monk, and not knowing the roads he has taken the wrong road, and has been captured. Somebody has recognized him as the bandit, Young Linear. Just then a patrol of about 50 men came up in charge of a young man on a white horse. Shirshio recognized him, but asked the old man who he was. That is the third son of old Zhu, our village chief, and is named Tiger's Cub. The girl 10 feet of green is betrothed to him. Shirshio again thanked him, and asked to be shown the road. The man urged him not to go that day, as there was great danger, and it was getting dark. After further pressing, Shirshio again went indoors. Shortly afterwards there was knocking at the street door, and a voice called out, The red lamp will be the signal tonight, and when you people see it, you must join the attack on the brigands. When the man had gone, Shirshio asked who he was, and was informed that he was the local police inspector, and that night he hoped to arrest Song Jiang. Shirshio thought matters over, and then taking a fire, he bade the old man good night, and went to the room at the back, and sleep there. Song Jiang was waiting in his tent for a long time, and at last as Shirshio and Yang Lin had not returned, he sent out Oping to see whether he could get any news. When he returned, he reported that he had heard cries in the village about a spy. The paths were so numerous and complicated that he dared not go any farther. Upon hearing this, Song Jiang was very angry. Evidently they have captured our 2 brothers, so why should we wait here any longer, as we cannot get any inside information? We must attack at once and try to save the lives of our brothers. What do you think of that? He asked the other leaders. I will fall on slaughtering, offered Li Kuei. Song Jiang issued orders that all the men should prepare for an immediate advance. Li Kuei and Yang Xiong were to be in charge of the vanguard, Li Jun in charge of the rear guard, Mu Hong on the left wing, Huang Xian on the right wing, while Song Jiang, Hua Rong, and Oping took charge of the main body. There was at once a great hubbub, waving of flags, beating of drums and gongs, and a great display of swords and axes. It was evening. Upon reaching the Zhu family village, Li Kuei found that the bridge had been drawn up, and as there were no lights showing in the village, he thought of going through the water. But Yang Xiong held him back and said, as the village gates are closed, it may be only a plot or trap for us. We will wait until the other leaders arrive, and then we will discuss matters. Li Kuei could not endure any delay, so lifting aloft his 2 axes he yelled, Old Zhu, you damned crook! You come out? The black whirlwind is waiting here for you. No reply came from the village to this challenge. Just then Song Jiang and the other leaders came up, and were told of the position. Song Jiang was surprised not to see even a single man on the other side, and also became suspicious. Suddenly he remarked, I have made a mistake. In the 3 heavenly books I received it was stated quite clearly, in warfare make no undue haste. I forgot about this in my haste to save the lives of our comrade, and have brought troops here without proper plans for entering the village. Now that I am here, the enemy hides. There is evidently a plot, and I must at once give orders for a retreat. Li Kuei said, but as we have come so far we cannot retreat without doing something. I will go forward, and you can follow me. While he was speaking, a skyrocket went up from the village, and instantly on all the hills surrounding the village there were numerous lights from torches. From the tower above the village gate came a shower of arrows. Song Jiang gave the orders for retreat, but Li Jun, leader of the rear guard, came and said, the road we arrived by is now all obstructed, and there is probably an ambush. Song Jiang gave an order for a number of horsemen to try and find some other road. Just then another skyrocket went up on one of the surrounding hills, followed by loud shouts from all sides. Song Jiang was quite perplexed. Even the strategist with the most elaborate plans could not avoid getting into a tight corner. Plans to catch a tiger or a dragon in its den are ready to capture. The extraordinary men.